The Stranger I Met, written by Eberichukwu, Folktale Therapy. After my father-in-law's burial ceremony, I returned from the village with a mix of lessons and shocking revelations. My husband was still upset about the slap his sister gave me, but the lady in question seemed unfazed. However, one early morning, my sister-in-law sent a wrapper as a gift to me. A woman that see herself as God in the family. She was indirectly asking for forgiveness. Alas, I said, finally, out of pride she did this. The gift came with silent message, no word, no apology, just the wrapper. What a pride! My husband's family had taken my age as a weakness, exploiting it to abuse me. They never knew I will ever stop to conquer. It was as if my silence spoke volume. Unknowingly to them my silence was a sign of strength, not submission. Though my husband eventually realized his mistake and pleaded with me to forgive him, but his violent behavior persisted. His father's words echoed in my mind, "Forgive your husband, my wife, and don't make your wife a punching bag." My father-in-law warning and calm word echoed in my subconscious mind, "Forgive your husband, my wife, and don't make your wife a punching bag. She is meant to be your friend and not a punching bag." My husband will always respond, "Sorry Dad, I will not try that again," but I know he wouldn't stop because he had hit the father when he was younger. My experience during my father-in-law burial ceremony kept me abreast of the family history of domestic violence. Most times, I don't blame my husband, James, because he had weak parental background. He was not trained by the mother. The mother died immediately he, James, was born. James was taken to the motherless baby home 3 days after his birth. What a tragic scenario. The nature of James' training at the motherless home made me ignore and forgive most of his negative behavior. James regularly displayed conduct unbecoming of a gentleman. His behavior is shocking and unsuitable for me, but I keep managing until one day I came back from school and met a strange woman in my house. "Who are you, young woman?" Her response was glaringly obvious. She was giving a room by my husband. From our 3-bedroom flat, the couples paid James to occupy the space without my consent. "Caro, where is your husband?" I asked. "He is not my husband but my boyfriend." Caro was pregnant but hiding it. My flat neighbor, who was an elderly person, already told me that Caro is pregnant. "Caro, how are you?" my husband will always ask. I noticed her closeness to my husband, which sparked my curiosity. When I confronted Caro about her relationship with my husband, she revealed a shocking truth. James was sleeping with his cousin Neoma, a young girl who normally comes around to help with household chores. "Pretty," she called me. "You are living with a total stranger." Still difficult to understand. I hunched, sniffing like a child. "What do you mean, Caro?" I asked. She sat on a bare floor, flapping her fingers. I was curious, shouted at her, "Be straightforward." "I'm losing my mind, James. Your husband sleeps with his cousin's sister Neoma." I was thinking loud but completely lost, still gaping stupidly at her. Caro, what did you just said? Yes, you had me right. He is sleeping with Neoma. Neoma was a little cousins of my husband who always come around to help in the domestic work because I had no house help. A little tiny girl with no flesh, Caro continued. Neoma will always come to ask me of pain relief drug every morning after sleeping with him. But I noticed she always disappear from the house each weekend you comes back. I tried to link it up with the story my husband told me one day I visited home. Pretty, your mother accused me of infidelity. Because I was naive and younger then, I went and confronted my mother, not realizing I was defending a monster. Alas, early marriage has its bitter truths. It was a harrowing experience I endured. Domestic violence entwined with infidelity, a heart-wrenching reality I faced. But I chose to endure, until one faithful morning, when everything was about to change. Episode 3 Loading. The Stranger I Met. Written by EBERECHUKWU, Folktale Therapy. The memories of my marriage still linger in my mind like a bittersweet melody. I met my husband under unusual circumstances. I entered his private car thinking it was a taxi, and we became fast friends. He was charming, handsome, and older than me. We started dating, and despite our age gap, I was drawn to his good looks and charismatic personality. Months later, he visited my house with his younger cousins, who professed their love for me and asked for a close relationship. After I finished writing my WAEC, he proposed to me, and I was torn. But then, a fair, pretty lady visited me at his house, introducing herself as his lover. She warned me about his intentions, telling me he would never marry me and was only using me. My curiosity got the better of me, but my husband-to-be convinced me she was just a bedmate and nothing more. Despite my reservations, we got married, and I became pregnant with our first child. The bride price wasn't paid, but we had a big wedding when I was 8 months pregnant. After our son's birth, the bride price was paid, and my husband's true nature began to show. He was controlling, arrogant, and violent, often beating me over small things. I would run to my father's house, seeking refuge. Despite the challenges, I loved my husband, his siblings, and his town. His father, however, treated me like a goddess, and his love humbled me. I struggled to balance my studies, working as a teacher in a private school to support myself. The experience was grueling, with long hours and meager pay. However, years of our marriage were a rollercoaster ride of emotions. My husband's behavior was a mix of loving and caring, but also volatile and violent. The beatings and quarrels became more frequent, and I often found myself running to my father's house to escape the abuse. Despite the challenges, I was determined to pursue my education and become independent. I juggled my studies, teaching in a private school, and taking care of our children. It wasn't easy, but I managed to earn my diploma and degree. The experience was grueling, but I was driven by the desire to create a better life for myself and my children. My husband's behavior didn't change, but I learned to cope and adapt. I realized that his violent outbursts were a reflection of his own struggles and insecurities. When his father passed away, I received a call from my husband, and I was devastated. His father had been a source of comfort and support for me, and his loss was a significant blow. During the burial, tensions ran high, and I was advised not to bring my children due to the distance and potential hostility from his family members. I heeded the advice, but things didn't go smoothly. A confrontation with his senior sister left me reeling. She slapped me for speaking my mind, and it was a wake-up call. I realized that the violent behavior might be a trait that ran deep in their family, and I began to prepare myself for future conflicts. The experience shaped me into the strong woman I am today, and I'm determined to protect myself and my children from any further harm. The Stranger I Met continue in Part 2. She died with the secret only the abandoned son knows. Written by Eberichukwu, Folktale Therapy. As the sun set over the small town, the Okoro's household was filled with an unbearable sorrow. Mary, the loving mother and wife, had lost her battle with breast cancer, leaving behind her devastated family. Her husband, John, was consumed by grief, but he had to find a way to care for their two young children, Emily and her older stepbrother, Michael. Michael, 12 years old, had been brought into the marriage by Mary. He had grown close to John, who had accepted him as his own. However, John's biological daughter, Emily, was only 5 years old, and her mother's passing had left her feeling lost and scared. As the days went by, John's behavior towards Michael began to change. He started to notice how intelligent and curious Michael was, often helping Emily with her homework and solving complex problems with ease. John couldn't help but compare Michael's abilities to Emily's, who was still learning the basics. One day, John sat Michael down and told him that he couldn't stay with them anymore. Michael was shocked and asked why. John explained that he thought it would be best for Emily, as she needed to grow up without the distraction of her stepbrother's intelligence overshadowing hers. Michael was heartbroken and felt like he was being punished for being smart. Michael remembered the countless times he had helped Emily with her homework, the way he had read her stories and played games with her. He had always tried to be a good big brother, and now it seemed like that wasn't enough. As he packed his bags, he felt like a part of him was being torn away. John drove Michael to a nearby foster home, where he would have to live from now on. As they said the goodbyes, Michael couldn't help but wonder if he would ever see Emily again. John handed him a small bag with some clothes and a few belongings, his eyes avoiding Michael's. The foster home was a small, crowded place with several other children. Michael felt like an outsider, struggling to adjust to his new surroundings. He missed Emily's giggles and the way she would cling to him when she was scared. He missed Mary's warm hugs and the way she would listen to him when he needed someone to talk to. As the days turned into weeks, Michael became withdrawn. He stopped participating in class and lost interest in the activities he once enjoyed. His grades began to slip, and he struggled to find his place in the foster home. Meanwhile, Emily was struggling to cope with the loss of her mother and the absence of her beloved stepbrother. She would ask John about Michael, but he would brush it off, telling her that Michael was in a new home where he would be happy. As the months went by, Emily grew more curious about Michael's whereabouts. She would sneak onto the computer when John wasn't looking, trying to find Michael's contact information. One day, she managed to send him a message, and they began to exchange emails. Michael was overjoyed to hear from Emily, and they started to reconnect. They would talk about the days, share stories, and reminisce about the times they spent together. Michael told Emily about the foster home, and how hard it was to adjust. Emily shared her own struggles, feeling lost without her mother and missing her big brother. As their communication grew stronger, Michael began to realize that John's decision to send him away had more to do with his own insecurities than anything else. John had always been proud of Emily, but he seemed to feel threatened by Michael's intelligence and capabilities. With Emily's encouragement, Michael started to focus on his studies again. He worked hard, determined to make a better life for himself. He knew that he had a long way to go, but with Emily by his side, he felt like he could overcome anything. As the years passed, Michael and Emily remained close, despite the distance between them. They would talk on the phone, share stories, and support each other through the ups and downs of life. Michael became a brilliant young man, earning top grades and pursuing his passion for science and technology. John, on the other hand, realized too late that he had made a grave mistake. He had underestimated Michael's kindness and intelligence, and he had lost the opportunity to see him grow into a remarkable young man. Emily would visit Michael during school breaks, and they would spend hours talking about their lives, their dreams, and their future. Years later, they missed contact. Michael traveled to UK with scholarship to study medicine. He studied medicine, came back as the best graduating Nigerian doctor. Immediately he came back, he contacted the sister Emily. One day, he received an invitation to give a keynote speech as the best graduated medical doctor among his sets at a prestigious conference. He invited the sister Emily. He was nervous but excited, knowing that this was a chance to make a difference. As he took the stage, he glanced out at the crowd and saw Emily in the front row, beaming with pride. After the speech, Emily rushed to hug him, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I'm so proud of you, Michael," she said, her voice trembling. "Mom would be proud too." At that moment, Michael remembered his little secret about him and Emily. "Emily, my little sister, I will tell you about us, something you never knew. I've been waiting for the right time. I think it is time. Dad will be surprised," He didn't know either. Mom said I shouldn't tell him until we grew up. Mom actually wanted me to grow under the tutelage of Dad, but the reverse was the case. Dad is not a good man. He asked me out of the house because he felt I was not his blood. He never knew I was his true blood and flesh. The story begins. He raped Mom when she was a housemaid at age 15. Mom carried and nursed the child, gave birth to him, and the person is Michael. Silence erodes. Emily started shedding tears. Stop, Emily. If you want me to complete the story. Emily continues sobbing for 30 minutes. Michael hugged her, consoled her and said, I will complete the story before Dad, but not today again. The day Nigeria government wanted to give Michael award, they demanded for the present of the parents. Michael had no choice than to call the dad, who had no information about his success story. Phone rang severally. John picked his call. Good morning, Father. I'm the boy you asked to leave your house years ago. Please. The Nigeria government will like to see you at Abuja for awards ceremony on 5th of January 2023. Make sure you come with Emily, my cherished sister. Phone dropped from John's hand. John was astonished and perplexed for days, waited for Emily to come back from nursing school. On 5th of January, the hall was full with prestigious people, government officials and students from diaspora. John was still in shock as they called Michael out as the best graduating medical doctor among his set with an award of 10 million naira. John stood confused and surprised. Emily ran to his brother and kissed him at the forehead. I'm proud of you, bro. You were born great. I'm proud to be identified with you as my only brother. Tears started rolling down from Michael's eyes as he started the story of his life. My father abandoned me when I was 12. He didn't ask of my well-being. I grew up in the street, teaching children mathematics and sciences. I wrote scholarship exams severely. I went through my secondary education and higher institutions with scholarships. Thank God I stood before him testifying as the only biological son he ever had. John stood with amazement, wanted to ask questions. Michael continued, yes, you impregnated my mother when he was 15 years old as a housemaid. Years later, you came asking for her hand in marriage. Unknowingly to you that she was the girl you impregnated and abandoned years ago. She agreed to marry you because she wanted me to grow under my father's guide. Though all her efforts was in vain because you deserted me when immediately she died. Sincerely, I doubt if my mother's spirit will ever forgive you. You offended her twice. You deflowered her and abandoned his only son. God will judge you, Dad. John fainted. Emily and Michael hugged themselves in tears. People came consoling them and trying to resuscitate John. This life is a lesson. Live it with utmost carefulness because the future is pregnant. Countless times I washed her clothes, and that's written by Eberichukwu, Folktale Therapy. As I stood by the washing basin, scrubbing away at the dirty cloth, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. My friend Mike's visit had sparked a conversation that would linger in my mind for a while. You're doing laundry? Mike asked, his tone laced with amusement. Where's your wife? I rinsed the cloth and hung it to dry. She's busy with work, Mike. I'm just helping out. Mike chuckled. You're a good man, but you're not supposed to be doing this. It's women's work, bro. I smiled wryly. I think it's about teamwork, Mike. When I support my wife, our relationship grows stronger. Mike shook his head. You're emasculating yourself, man. That's not what men do. I folded the cloth, my mind racing with thoughts. Emasculating. I think it's the opposite. When I show love and support, our bond grows stronger. Just then, my wife walked into the room, exhausted from a long day. I handed her a warm smile and a freshly washed towel. Hey, love. I've got this. Her eyes lit up, and she smiled back, relieved. Thank you, dear. You're the best. In that moment, I knew washing cloth wasn't just about cleanliness, it was about showing love and appreciation. Mike might not understand, but my wife and I did. We worked together, side by side, building a beautiful life. As we hung the cloth to dry, my wife shared stories about her day. We laughed and chatted, enjoying each other's company. It was a simple moment, but one that brought us closer together. You're amazing, she said, squeezing my hand. I don't know what I'd do without you. I smiled, feeling grateful for our relationship. You'll never have to find out, love. That night, as we sat together, watching the stars, I realized that washing cloth wasn't just a chore, it was an act of love. And that's what marriage is all about, supporting each other, in every way possible. To all the men out there, don't be afraid to lend a hand. Washing cloth, cooking, or helping with household chores, it's not emasculating, it's loving. Build something unique and beautiful with your partner. Trust me, it's worth it. As I looked at my wife, I knew that our relationship was built on mutual respect, trust, and love. And washing cloth was just a small part of it. We'd continue to support each other, through thick and thin, and our bond would only grow stronger. In the end, it's not about who's doing what, it's about working together as a team. When we support each other, our relationships flourish. So, let's break free from societal expectations and build something beautiful together. With that thought, I wrapped my arms around my wife and held her close. I love you, I whispered, feeling grateful for our relationship. I love you too, she replied, smiling up at me. In that moment, I knew that washing cloth, cooking, or helping with household chores wasn't just about tasks, it was about showing love and care. And that's what marriage is all about. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I realized that Mike's words still lingered in my mind. Maybe it was time to share our story with him, to show him that supporting each other wasn't emasculating, but loving. The next time Mike visited, I shared our story with him. I told him about the countless times I'd helped my wife with household chores, and how it had brought us closer together. Mike listened intently, his expression changing from skepticism to curiosity. "I never thought about it that way," he said, nodding. "Maybe I'll try it out with my own wife." I smiled, feeling happy that our story could inspire him. "It's not about who does what," I said. "It's about working together as a team and showing love and care for each other." Mike nodded again, this time with determination. "You're right. I'll start helping out more." And with that, our conversation came full circle. Mike had come to understand the value of supporting his partner, and I was happy to have played a part in his journey. As for me and my wife, we'd continue to build our life together, one load of laundry at a time. To all the men out there, I encourage you to do the same. Support your partners, help with household chores, and show them love and care. Trust me, it's worth it. Let's build something beautiful together, one act of love at a time. Please read, watch and share My Husband Deceived Me to Adopt His Child. Written by Eberichukwu, Folktale Therapy. Judith and Ifeanyi were the picture-perfect couple in Anambra State, Nigeria. They got married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family. After a year of marriage, Judith gave birth to twin boys, followed by another set of twin boys 2 years later. The family of 4 boys was complete, but Judith and Ifeanyi both yearned for a baby girl to complete their family. As time passed, Judith's desire for a baby girl only grew stronger. She would often confide in her friends and family about her longing for a little princess. Ifeanyi, on the other hand, seemed less enthusiastic about the idea, but Judith brushed it off, thinking he was just preoccupied with work. Unknowingly to Judith, Ifeanyi had a secret. He had been involved with a young woman, Angel, who worked as a secretary in one of his companies. Angel had become pregnant with Ifeanyi's child, and he had arranged for her to give birth in a private hospital, under the guise of supporting a friend. The truth was, Ifeanyi had planned for Angel to give birth to their daughter, and he would then arrange for the child to be adopted by a couple in need of a child. Angel gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, and Ifeanyi was overjoyed. He visited Angel in the hospital, held his daughter in his arms, and felt a sense of pride and satisfaction. However, his affection was short-lived, as he soon took the baby girl to a motherless baby home, telling the staff that he had found the child abandoned on the street. Meanwhile, Judith and Ifeanyi had been exploring adoption options, and they were thrilled when they received a call from the motherless baby home about a beautiful baby girl who needed a loving home. They quickly finalized the adoption process, and their baby girl, Agechi, was brought home to join their family of 4 boys. Judith was over the moon with joy, showering Agechi with love and attention. Ifeanyi, too, seemed delighted, but his happiness was tinged with guilt. He knew the truth about Agechi's parentage, and it weighed heavily on his conscience. Months passed, and the family adjusted to life with their new addition. However, The secret Ephraim kept began to unravel when Angel, who had been struggling to come to terms with giving up her child, showed up at Ephraim's office, demanding to see her daughter. Ephraim tried to brush her off, but Angel's persistence led her to Judith's doorstep, where she revealed the shocking truth. Judith was devastated. She felt betrayed, deceived, and heartbroken. The thought of raising her husband's illegitimate child as their own adoption was too much to bear. "Are you not happy? Agechi is calling Mom, why are you?" Ephraim asked the wife. She packed her bags, left the children, and Ephraim, vowing never to return. Ephraim was consumed by grief and regret. He realized too late the gravity of his actions and the pain he had caused Judith. He tried to seek reconciliation rudely, but Judith's wounds ran too deep. For 3 years, Ephraim waited, hoping that Judith would forgive him and return to him. Tragically, fate had other plans. Ephraim fell ill and passed away as a result of his broken home, surrounded by his family, but without Judith by his side. Judith, though shocked by the news, felt a mix of emotions: sadness for the loss of life, regretted not forgiving him, but also relief that the man who had deceived her was no longer in her life. As for Agechi, Judith decided to keep her and raise her as her own, despite the circumstances of her birth. Judith knew that Agechi was innocent and deserved love and care. She also realized that she couldn't undo the past but could work towards creating a brighter future for her children. In the end, Judith emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. She learned that forgiveness is a process, and though she may never forgive Ephraim, she could forgive herself for staying in a marriage that wasn't built on trust and honesty. As she looked at Agechi, now a part of their family, Judith knew that she would do everything to give her children the love, care, and stability they deserved. The Stranger I Met 3. Written by Eberichukwu, Folktale Therapy. When everything was about to change, it seemed as if James had repented of his violent behavior. But then he displayed the worst of it all. My first son, Solomon, is stubborn but full of zeal for education and very hardworking. One day, James warned him sternly, "Solomon, I don't want to see you outside the house when you return from school." Yet Solomon would always play on the staircase with his peers. The moment he saw his father approaching, he would run inside. One fateful afternoon, Solomon was busy, as usual, playing on the staircase. He jumped from one step to another, shouting and yelling. "Solomon!" his father barked. "What are you doing?" Solomon stood there, staring blankly. James ran inside the house, came back with a long slim cane, and began flogging him. With the strength of a child, Solomon grabbed the cane. Without remorse, James tried to snatch it back by force. In the struggle, the cane struck his eye. What a big blow! Raging in anger, my husband James stormed into the kitchen, which was close to the staircase. He grabbed a kitchen knife and struck Solomon on the head. Blood gushed out immediately as Solomon cried. James showed no regret. Instead, he forced Solomon to clean up the blood on the floor. Solomon, knowing what his father was capable of, obeyed and began cleaning. Just then, my neighbor's son, Chuka, stormed in. "What is wrong with you, Solomon?" he asked. Solomon, with tears in his eyes, could barely speak. "Solomon," Chuka screamed. "What happened?" Solomon pointed at the kitchen knife lying on the gas table. What about the knife?" Chuka pressed. Daddy, he hit the knife on my head," Solomon managed to say. Chuka stood there, shocked. "He did this to you, and still asked you to bend and clean the blood." Without wasting time, Chuka rushed Solomon to a nearby private hospital, where he was treated and later brought back home. By the time they returned, James had gone to his usual drinking spot. What a cruel father! Without conscience, without fatherly love. When I came back that evening, Solomon was already in a deep sleep. Chuka narrated the whole story to me. I was sad, depressed, and angry. I later took Solomon to a nearby photo studio, shaved his head closely, snapped him and left. James came back home very late that night, drunk. No words, no remorse, no apology, he simply went straight to bed. The following morning, he bathed and left as if nothing had happened. It was a terrible ordeal that has refused to leave my subconscious mind till this very moment. That incident prepared me for even bigger troubles ahead. A man who could treat his first child in that manner could one day kill his wife. My reason: the child is his blood, but the wife is just his partner. James is kind and good-looking but hot-tempered. He can give all he has and start begging the next minute. Tell me of a man who is hard-working, kind-hearted, and compassionate, yet lustful, arrogant, and full of rage. I will mention James Okoro. I actually wanted to quit the marriage, not by choice but out of fear. His rage was uncontrollable. I kept praying for him, hoping to see a change. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. I had my third child, and later my last, 3 boys and a girl in total. I thought he would turn a new leaf after building such a blessed home. Alas, he grew worse. His friends were his nightmare, terrible, wicked, and bad friends who influenced him negatively at every opportunity. James is tall and handsome. Though uneducated, he surrounded himself with educated people, lawyers and politicians. When I had my last baby, my mother came for Omugwo and witnessed a terrible scene between James and me. He hit me as though I were his fellow man, with no regard for the presence of his mother-in-law. My mother picked her belongings and left the house. But where exactly did she go when she left? And what did James do after she was gone? The Stranger I Met continues in Episode 4. Episode 4. The Stranger I Met, The Bitter Taste of Marriage. Written by Eberichukwu. My mother left my house and went straight to our family home. With a heavy heart, she told my father and siblings what she had witnessed in my marriage. The Omugwo she came for, meant to be a season of joy and bonding, turned into heartbreak and futility. What should have been a time of excitement was instead a bitter pill. From that day, she often looked at me with pity, shedding tears in secret over the things she had observed in my home. Yet my family could do nothing. We were financially bankrupt, and as a Catholic Christian family, especially my mother, it was difficult to imagine pulling me out of my marital vows. I had undergone both the traditional and religious ceremonies. All the marital rites had been paid, and James had agreed to the conditions set before marriage. He had seemed so desperate, so completely devoted to me. But the man I saw after the marriage vows were exchanged was unrecognizable, a stranger I could not reconcile with the love he once professed. Marriage is not for the weak, my mother would always remind me. It requires prayers, understanding, dedication, commitment, and perseverance. But oh, dear readers, it was a terrible experience. To step into marriage with naivety and immaturity is one of the greatest mistakes anyone can make in life. I was still young and not very easygoing myself. Reckless at times, I did not care what would happen the next second. I was always ready for James's troubles, never minding the consequences. What did I know, really? Our marriage was full of storms, endless quarrels, fights, bickering, deceit, and negative influences. Because James was uneducated, he was easily manipulated by his friends. Any agreement we had reached during the day would vanish after he spent time with them. He would return home with a hardened heart, controversial and unstable, revisiting old arguments we thought were settled. I resisted him often, for I knew his decisions were not from a place of good conscience but poisoned suggestions designed by his friends to ruin my career and peace of mind. After the Omugwo saga, however, I grew a tough skin. I vowed to make progress in life, no matter the odds stacked against me. James's daily routine was predictable: eat, do his small business, drink to stupor, and return late into the night. He preferred the company of his side chicks and miscreants in beer parlors, drinking like fools, making pointless political arguments, and shouting over irrelevant matters. What a shame! A father emotionally and physically absent from his own children. When he did show interest in the children, it was with the iron hand of an army officer punishing offenders. His voice thundered, his movements were frightening, and his punishments were brutal. My son Solomon and his siblings often forced themselves to sleep before his arrival. The fear was unbearable. I would not wish such an experience on even my greatest enemy. Loneliness became my closest companion. I began visiting prayer houses, seeking solace, making new friends, and preparing for the uncertainties of tomorrow. One bright morning, I visited a prophet with my elder and younger sisters. "Young girl, you are married?" he asked. "Yes, sir," I replied softly. "You didn't inquire about the man before marrying him," he said. His words pierced me. I had nothing to say. He continued, "Notwithstanding, you are born for greatness. Listen carefully. Your education is the most important part of your destiny." I stared in dismay, my heart heavy with doubt and confusion. "Yes, my daughter," he insisted, "if you must succeed in life, you must climb the ladder of academics." At that moment, I remembered James's promise to my parents. When he came to seek my hand in marriage, my mother had said firmly, "James, my daughter must go to university if she marries you." He had agreed without hesitation. Clinging to that promise, I enrolled in a diploma and later a degree program. I struggled through, but by God's grace, I secured a job in a mission school after my youth service. During my 3-week orientation camp, banking was still underdeveloped, so I kept all my allowance in a small box. When I returned home, James demanded the money. I resisted. That evening, he beat me mercilessly, twisting my head and shouting, "Give me that money before I kill you here." But I held my ground. At that stage of my marriage, I had grown stubborn, adamant, even shameless in my resistance. His intimidation no longer frightened me. In a desperate act of defiance, I smashed all the bottles of beer he had packed. Startled, James ran out of the house like a coward, jumped into his car, and sped away. But he was unpredictable. I didn't know what he might do when he returned, so I fled to a friend's house nearby. I whispered to Solomon, my first son, to call me once his father had gone to bed. Solomon was only 10, yet he bore the brunt of my marital storms. He witnessed my tears, my fights, my shame. Each time James and I quarreled, Solomon cried until his eyes swelled. To make matters worse, James would abuse him, calling him all sorts of names. "You are a stupid boy, Solomon. Look at your head, just like your mother's. You are a foolish son." The words tore my heart apart. What an embarrassment, what cruelty, to an innocent child. Still, I consoled him. "Don't worry, son. Dry bones shall rise again." And Solomon, with tearful eyes, would always ask, "Mom, when?" He had 3 younger siblings, who would huddle together on one chair, crying silently, each time their father's rage thundered through the house. One night, when James was fast asleep, the children gathered around me. "Mom," they whispered, "let's run away. Let's go to a far place where Dad will never find us." Tears burst from my eyes. What a life! Misery, fear, emotional blackmail, and sorrow. I urged them to sleep until morning. But when I entered their room at dawn to wake them for school, my heart froze. The room was empty. I rushed to the kitchen door. It stood wide open. My children. Where are my children? I screamed, my voice cracking like a child's. To know where they were, dear readers, you must follow up into episode 5.